I remember standing outside the house I built with my own hands, staring at a text message that glowed like poison in the dark. We changed the locks. You don't belong here anymore. Maybe now you'll learn some respect. LOL. My mother's words. No warning. No conversation. Just that message at 11:43 p.m. on a Tuesday night, telling me I was homeless. I stood there in the rain, my work boots soaked through, my toolbox still in the truck, and I did something they didn't expect. I smiled. Because right then, I realized something they hadn't counted on. I had receipts. Every single one. And in 47 days, their lawyer would call them with 5 words that would flip their world upside down: we have a serious problem. Before I tell you how I legally claimed half the house they tried to steal from me, hit that like button and drop a comment. Have you ever been betrayed by the people who were supposed to protect you? Your stories matter. You're not alone in this fight. Let me take you back to where this really started. Not the night they changed the locks. That was just the final insult. This story begins 28 years earlier, in a house on Riverside Drive, where I learned that being the son they never wanted was a role I'd play my entire childhood. My name is Clara. Yeah, I know, unusual name for a guy. My parents wanted a daughter. They'd already picked the name, bought pink everything, told the whole neighborhood about their baby girl. Then I came out, and their disappointment was so thick you could taste it. They kept the name anyway. It's unisex, my mother would say with that tight smile she wore whenever someone asked. My father would just grunt and change the subject. That should have been my first clue about how much I actually mattered to them. Growing up, our family looked perfect from the outside. Richard and Diane Holloway. Successful real estate agents, beautiful colonial house, immaculate lawn. Every Sunday, neighbors would see us heading to church, all dressed up, looking like something out of a catalog. What they didn't see was the cold silence in our car. The way my parents would talk around me, not to me. The way my younger brother, Marcus, got the bedroom with the view while I got the converted storage room in the back. Marcus was everything I wasn't. Athletic, charismatic, effortlessly confident. He was the golden child, the one whose report cards went on the fridge, whose football games Dad never missed. I was the quiet one, the serious one, the one who preferred books to sports and building things to breaking them. Dad used to introduce us like this: this is Marcus, our star quarterback, and this is Clara, Clara does his homework. The laughter that followed always felt like tiny cuts. I learned early that love in our house was conditional. It had to be earned, and the currency was achievement, but only the right kind. When I made honor roll, it was expected. When Marcus passed algebra, it was celebrated. When I stayed up all night helping Dad fix the deck, it was my duty. When Marcus mowed the lawn once, he got $50 and a steak dinner. The math was simple. I didn't matter unless I was useful. High school was when the cracks really started to show. I worked 2 jobs, saved every penny, stayed out of trouble. I had plans. Big ones. I was going to study structural engineering at Portland State, maybe start my own contracting business someday. I showed my parents the acceptance letter with pride, hands actually shaking as I held it out across the dinner table. My mother glanced at it and went back to her salad. That's nice, sweetheart. Marcus, tell your father about the scholarship offer. That was it. No congratulations. No, we're proud of you. Just a pivot to Marcus and his football scholarship to a Division II school he'd eventually flunk out of. But that night, he was the son, and I was just background noise. I'll need help with tuition, I said quietly, trying to keep my voice steady. The financial aid covers most of it, but there's still about $8,000 a year. My father finally looked up, his expression somewhere between annoyed and amused. 8,000? For what, exactly? So you can learn to hammer nails? You already know how to do that. It's engineering, Dad. Structural engineering. It's a waste of money, he cut me off. You want to go to college? Fine. Pay for it yourself. Marcus needs our support for his athletic career. He's actually going somewhere. My mother nodded, dabbing her lips with a napkin. You've always been so independent, Clara. You'll figure it out. You always do. Independent. Their favorite word for me. It didn't mean strong. It meant alone. So I did what I always did. I figured it out. I worked construction during the day, waited tables at night, and took classes whenever I could fit them in. It took me 7 years to finish a 4-year degree, but I did it. Every credit hour paid for in sweat and overtime. Every textbook bought used or borrowed. I lived in a basement apartment that smelled like mildew and had hot water exactly 3 days a week. I ate ramen and peanut butter sandwiches for months at a time. But I made it. And through all of that, I still showed up. Still helped Dad with repairs when he called. Still lent Mom money when she claimed they were a little short on the mortgage. Still pretended that family meant something mutual, something reciprocal. Because that's what sons do, right? We show up. We provide. We prove our worth over and over, hoping that eventually, it'll be enough. It never was. The day of my graduation, I bought them tickets months in advance. Sent them the details 3 times. Called to confirm the week before. We'll be there, Mom promised. Wouldn't miss it for the world. I believed her. I actually believed her. Graduation day was clear and bright, the kind of June morning that feels like validation from the universe itself. I put on my cap and gown in that cramped apartment, looked at myself in the mirror, and felt something I hadn't felt in years: pride. Real, uncomplicated pride. I'd done this. Against every odd, every obstacle, every person who'd dismissed me. I was a college graduate with a degree in structural engineering and a 3.8 GPA. I scanned the crowd from the stage, looking for my parents. They'd said they'd be in section C, row 12. I found row 12. Empty seats. I checked my phone during the procession. One text from my mother, sent 2 hours earlier: something came up with Marcus. Can't make it. Congrats though. Graduation cap: something came up with Marcus. Of course it did. It always did. I walked across that stage, shook hands with the dean, accepted my diploma, and smiled for a picture no one in my family would ever see. When they called my name, I heard scattered applause from strangers. The girl next to me had her entire extended family there, screaming and waving signs. I had my phone in my pocket, vibrating with a text that might as well have said, "You still don't matter enough." After the ceremony, I sat in my truck in the parking lot and watched families taking pictures, hugging, celebrating. I thought about calling them, demanding an explanation. But I knew what I'd get. Excuses. Justifications. Maybe even irritation that I was making it a big deal. So I drove home, hung my diploma on the wall of my basement apartment, and went to work the next day like nothing had happened. But something had happened. Something quiet and final. A door inside me closed, and I didn't even realize it yet. 3 years later, I was doing well. Really well. I'd started my own small contracting business, Holloway Builds, and it was growing faster than I'd expected. Word travels in construction when you're reliable, skilled, and fair. I had steady clients, a small crew, and enough income to move out of that basement into a decent 2-bedroom apartment. Nothing fancy, but it was mine. Paid for with my own money, decorated with furniture I'd built myself. My parents, meanwhile, were struggling. The real estate market had crashed, and they'd made some bad investments. Suddenly, those perfect, successful Holloways weren't so perfect anymore. The house on Riverside Drive, the one they'd poured everything into, needed serious work. The roof was failing. The foundation had cracks. The plumbing was a disaster. And guess who they called? Clara, honey, my mother's voice dripped with sweetness I hadn't heard in years. We need your help. You know your father and I aren't handy like you are. The house needs some repairs, and we just can't afford to hire someone right now. I should have said no. Every instinct I had screamed it. But there's this thing that happens when you grow up seeking approval from people who never give it. When they finally ask for you, specifically for you, it feels like the validation you've been chasing your whole life. What needs to be done? I asked. The list was extensive. New roof, foundation repair, complete plumbing overhaul, electrical updates, kitchen renovation. Easily $100,000 in work if they hired professionals. They didn't ask if I'd do it. They assumed. We're family, Dad said when I hesitated. Family helps family. Or are you too successful now to care about the people who raised you? There it was. The guilt. The implication that I owed them something for the childhood they'd given me. The same childhood where I'd been an afterthought, a disappointment, a tool they used when convenient. I agreed. On one condition. I want it in writing, I said. A contract that states I'm contributing materials and labor toward improvements on the house, and that entitles me to partial ownership or reimbursement. My father laughed. Actually laughed. A contract? Clara, we're your parents. You don't need a contract. We'll take care of you. When we sell someday, you'll get your share. You have my word. I'd prefer it in writing. My mother's voice went cold. Are you saying you don't trust us? After everything we've done for you? And there it was again. The manipulation. The twist. Suddenly I was the bad guy for wanting basic legal protection for tens of thousands of dollars of work and materials. I caved. I'm not proud of it, but I did. I told myself that maybe this was the bridge. Maybe this was how we'd finally become the family I'd always wanted. Maybe if I helped them save their home, they'd finally see me as worthy. For 8 months, I worked on that house. Nights, weekends, every spare hour I had. My crew helped when they could, but mostly it was just me. I replaced the entire roof in a Portland winter, which if you know anything about Oregon weather, is basically volunteering for hypothermia. I jackhammered out sections of the foundation and repoured them. I rewired the electrical system to code. I renovated the kitchen with custom cabinets I built by hand. I put $47,000 of my own money into materials. $47,000. Money I'd saved for my own future, my own home, my own life. But this was family, right? This was love. This was finally mattering. My parents would stop by occasionally to check on progress. They'd criticize the paint color, suggest changes to the design, complain about the noise. But they never helped. Not once. Marcus came by one weekend, drunk, and told me the cabinets looked kinda cheap. Then he asked to borrow $200. When it was finally finished, the house looked incredible. Completely transformed. My mother hosted an open house party for her friends, showing off the renovations like she'd done them herself. I showed up dirty from another job, and she frowned at my boots on her clean floor. Could you take those off? We just had the floors redone. I redid those floors. On my hands and knees. For 3 weeks. But I smiled, took off my boots, and stood in the corner while she accepted compliments on her beautiful home. The breaking point came on a random Thursday night. I stopped by to drop off some leftover materials they'd wanted for the garage. The front door was unlocked, so I walked in, calling out to let them know I was there. No answer. But I heard voices from the dining room. Low, conspiratorial. I should have left. But something in my gut told me to listen. Worth at least $450 now, maybe more with all the improvements. My father's voice, smug with satisfaction. And Clara doesn't suspect anything? That was Marcus, home from whatever job he'd just gotten fired from. My mother laughed softly. Suspect what? She did it all voluntarily. We never signed anything. Legally, she has no claim. The floor beneath me felt like it was tilting. But she put in so much work, Marcus said, not out of concern for me, but almost like he was impressed by their con. Doesn't she expect something? She expects family, my father said. And family is what she'll get. A nice thank you and nothing more. The house is in our name. The improvements are ours. She made a choice to help, and we're grateful, but business is business. Do you think she'll fight it? Marcus asked. With what? My mother's voice was cold, clinical. She has no documentation, no contract, no proof of any agreement. If she makes noise, we'll just tell people she's bitter and jealous. Everyone knows she's always been the difficult one. I stood there in the hallway, my heart beat so loud I was sure they'd hear it. The walls I'd repaired seemed to close in. The floor I'd refinished felt unstable. Every inch of that house, saturated with my labor, my money, my desperate need to be enough for them, suddenly felt like a tomb. I left without saying a word. Got in my truck and drove until I couldn't see straight anymore. Pulled over on some back road and finally let myself feel it. All of it. The rage, the humiliation, the grief. Not just for the money or the work, but for the 28 years I'd spent trying to earn love from people who saw me as a resource, not a son. I didn't cry. I'm not sure why. Maybe I was too angry. Maybe I was too tired. Or maybe some part of me had finally just turned off. I drove home at 2 a.m, sat at my kitchen table, and opened my laptop. If they wanted to play business, we'd play business. I started compiling everything. Every receipt for materials. Every photo I'd taken of the renovations for my portfolio. Every text message where they'd asked me to buy something, fix something, pay for something. Every bank statement showing transfers to them. Every email. It took me 3 days of barely sleeping, but when I was done, I had a file 3 inches thick. Then I waited. Because I knew them. I knew they'd make a move eventually. People who con family always get greedy. I didn't have to wait long. Exactly 2 weeks later, I got a text from my mother. Hi, sweetheart. We've decided to downsize. The house is going on the market next month. Thought you'd want to know. Thanks again for all your help with the renovations. We really appreciate you. Red heart, there it was. They were selling. About to walk away with $500,000, all while pretending I'd just been a helpful son doing his duty. I called an attorney that afternoon. Her name was Patricia Chen, and she specialized in property and family law. I walked into her office with my file and laid it all out. She went through it slowly, methodically, her expression getting sharper with each page. When she finished, she looked up at me with something like respect. This is one of the most well-documented cases of unjust enrichment I've ever seen, she said. You have texts, receipts, photos with metadata, bank statements, even emails where they acknowledge your financial contributions. Did they ever sign anything? No. I asked. They refused. Said family doesn't need contracts. That's going to haunt them, she said. In Oregon, you don't need a written contract to claim unjust enrichment or quantum merit. You provided valuable services and materials with a reasonable expectation of compensation. They accepted those benefits. And now they're selling the property, which shows intent to profit from your labor. Can we stop the sale? We can do better than that. We can file a lien against the property for the value of your contributions, and we can sue for partial ownership based on constructive trust. You essentially built equity in that home. They can't just take it. For the first time in 2 weeks, I felt something other than rage. I felt hope. How long will this take? If we move fast and they're as unprepared as I think they are, we could have a settlement in under 2 months. Their biggest mistake was that text message saying they appreciate your help. That's an admission of benefit received. I hired her on the spot. The next day, Patricia filed a lien against the property and a lawsuit claiming unjust enrichment, quantum merit, and constructive trust. We asked for $94,000 in damages, twice what I'd spent, to account for labor, or a 40% ownership stake in the property. The lawsuit was served to my parents on a Friday afternoon. By Friday night, my phone was exploding. 17 missed calls from my mother. 9 from my father. 12 texts ranging from confused to furious. What is this? You're suing us? Your own parents? How dare you? This is a misunderstanding. Call us immediately. You're being ridiculous. We can talk about this. I didn't respond. Not to a single message. On Saturday morning, my mother showed up at my apartment, pounding on the door. I watched through the peephole as she stood there, mascara running, voice breaking. Clara, please. Open the door. We need to talk about this. Your family. We can work this out. I didn't open the door. She stood there for 20 minutes before finally leaving, her sobs echoing down the hallway. I felt nothing. No guilt. No sympathy. Just a cold, clear certainty that I was done being their doormat. On Monday, their attorney called Patricia. The conversation, she told me later, went about as badly for them as possible. Your clients have a significant problem, Patricia said calmly. My client has documentation for every claim, and frankly, the text messages alone are damning. They admitted he provided help with renovations. They're attempting to sell property that's been improved with his unreimbursed labor and materials. That's textbook unjust enrichment. Their attorney apparently went silent for a long moment. Then, let me call you back. He called my parents immediately. I know this because my father left me a voicemail that night, and for the first time in my life, he didn't sound condescending or dismissive. He sounded scared. Clara. It's Dad. Our lawyer says, he says we have a problem. He says you might actually have a case. This is insane. You're going to destroy us over some misunderstanding? We're your parents. Call me back. We need to fix this. I didn't call back. The preliminary hearing was set for 3 weeks later. During that time, my parents tried everything. They sent Marcus to talk sense into me. He showed up at my office, all fake concern and brotherhood. Dude, come on. This is Mom and Dad. Yeah, they messed up, but you're really gonna take them to court? That's cold, man. They stole from me, I said flatly. $47,000 and 8 months of my life. They planned to cut me out from the beginning. I heard them. You heard them? Every word. His face went pale. He left without another word. My mother tried the guilt route, leaving voicemails about how stressed my father was, how this could give him a heart attack, how I was tearing the family apart. All over money, Clara. You're willing to destroy your family over money. I thought we raised you better than that. I saved every voicemail. Patricia said they could be useful. My father tried anger, sending me an email that was just pure rage. Calling me ungrateful, selfish, vindictive. Saying I'd always been a difficult, resentful child. That they should have known I'd turn on them eventually. I forwarded it to Patricia. This helps us how? I asked. It shows consciousness of guilt, she said. People who've done nothing wrong don't lash out like this. They defend themselves with facts. He's defending himself with attacks because he knows he's caught. The day of the hearing, I put on my best suit, the one I wore to client meetings. I looked at myself in the mirror and barely recognized the man staring back. Somewhere along the way, I'd stopped being the boy who begged for scraps of approval. I'd become someone who knew his worth and demanded it be recognized. The courthouse was downtown, all stone and authority. Patricia met me outside, calm and professional. Remember, she said. Stay composed. Don't get emotional. Let the evidence speak. We walked in together. My parents were already there with their attorney, a nervous-looking man in an ill-fitting suit. My mother's eyes were red and puffy. My father looked like he'd aged 10 years. Marcus sat behind them, scrolling through his phone. When my mother saw me, she stood up, reaching out. "Clara, please, can we just, Ms. Holloway," Patricia said firmly. "Please do not speak to my client." My mother recoiled like she'd been slapped. The mediation was brutal and efficient. Patricia laid out the evidence piece by piece. Receipts totaling $47,000. Photos timestamped throughout the renovation. Text messages where my parents requested specific materials and repairs. Bank statements showing transfers. Emails discussing the work. And that final, beautiful text, "Thanks again for all your help with the renovations." Their attorney tried to argue that I'd volunteered, that it was a gift, that families help each other without expectation of payment. Patricia dismantled every argument with case law and precedent. Oregon law was clear: when someone provides substantial labor and materials that directly increase property value, and the property owner accepts those benefits, there's an implied contract. The expectation of compensation doesn't have to be explicit. It can be inferred from the circumstances. And the circumstances here, Patricia said, are clear. Mr. Holloway performed professional-grade renovations on a property he doesn't own, using his own money and expertise, while his parents repeatedly assured him he'd be taken care of. That's an implied contract. Their attempt to sell the property without compensating him is a breach. The mediator, a sharp-eyed woman in her 50s, looked at my parents. "Do you dispute that your son performed this work?" My mother opened her mouth, but their attorney put a hand on her arm. "No, Your Honor. We don't dispute the work was done." "Do you dispute the financial contributions?" We believe they were voluntary." "Do you have any written documentation supporting that these were gifts with no expectation of return?" Silence. "Did you at any point offer to compensate your son for his labor and materials?" More silence. The mediator sighed. "I'm going to strongly encourage you to settle this. If this goes to trial, Mr. Holloway's case is extremely strong. You could end up owing far more than what's being asked for here." Their attorney huddled with my parents. I watched my father's face go from red to pale. My mother was crying silently. They whispered frantically, their perfect facade completely shattered. After 10 minutes, their attorney returned to the table. "My clients are willing to settle for $85,000, paid from the proceeds of the house sale before distribution." Patricia glanced at me. I nodded. It wasn't the full amount we'd asked for, but it was enough. Enough to feel like justice. Enough to rebuild. "We accept," Patricia said. The agreement was drawn up on the spot. My parents signed with shaking hands. The mediator made it official. When it was done, my father stood up abruptly and left without looking at me. My mother lingered, her eyes pleading. "Clara, goodbye, Mom," I said quietly. She flinched. Then she followed my father out. Marcus stopped next to me on his way out. "Was it worth it?" he asked, not quite meeting my eyes. "Yes," I said. "Because I'm not your family ATM anymore. I'm free." He didn't respond. Just walked away. 3 weeks later, the house sold for $485,000. After fees, commissions, and my settlement, my parents walked away with about $310,000. Still a significant amount, but not the windfall they'd planned. My $85,000 hit my account on a Thursday morning. I stared at the balance for a long time. It felt like vindication in digital form. That same day, my mother sent one final text: "I hope you're happy. You destroyed this family over money." I wrote back, "For the first time in months, you destroyed this family when you decided I was only valuable when I was useful. The money was just the proof." She didn't respond. I used part of the settlement to expand my business. Hired more people, bought better equipment, took on bigger projects. Holloway Builds grew into one of the most respected contracting companies in the Portland area. Clients told other clients. My reputation wasn't built on my last name. It was built on my work, my integrity, my skill. The rest of the money, I saved. For a house of my own someday. A real home. Where I'd change the locks and know that no one could take it from me. I still think about that night sometimes. Standing outside the house I'd rebuilt with my own hands, reading that text message. You don't belong here anymore. They were right, just not in the way they meant. I didn't belong there because I'd outgrown them. I didn't belong there because I'd finally realized my worth wasn't determined by their approval. They changed the locks to punish me. To remind me that I was disposable. What they actually did was set me free. Free from the cycle of proving myself to people who would never see me. Free from the weight of a family that only loved me when I was serving them. I don't talk to them anymore. I don't go to holidays. I don't answer calls. When people ask about my family, I tell them the truth, I don't have one. And I'm okay with that. Because I am. I built a life that doesn't require their validation. I built a business that proves my worth every single day. I built boundaries that protect my peace. They thought they were teaching me a lesson about respect. What they actually taught me was that family isn't about blood. It's about reciprocity, respect, and genuine care. And if those things aren't present, all you have are people who share your DNA, nothing more. Sometimes late at night, I wonder if they ever think about what they lost. Not the money. But me. The son who would have done anything for them, who wanted so desperately to be enough. I wonder if they realize that changing those locks didn't lock me out. It locked them out of ever knowing the man I became. But mostly, I don't think about them at all. I think about my crew, who feel more like brothers than Marcus ever did. I think about my clients, who trust me with their homes and their dreams. I think about the life I'm building, brick by brick, on a foundation that no one can take from me. Justice didn't come with apologies or reconciliation. It came with a settlement check and the knowledge that I'd stood up for myself when it mattered most. It came with the understanding that walking away from toxic people, even when they're family, isn't cruelty. It's survival. If you're reading this and you've been the reliable one, the useful one, the one who gives and gives while others take, hear me, your worth isn't measured by how much you sacrifice. It's measured by how well you protect your peace. And sometimes, protecting your peace means building walls between you and the people who only loved you when you were breaking yourself for them. They changed the locks. I changed my life. And I've never looked back. Hit that like button if this story resonated with you. Drop a comment telling me about a time you had to stand up for yourself against people who underestimated you. And subscribe, because there are more stories like this one, stories about men who refused to be broken, who fought back with strategy and strength, and who came out the other side free. Your peace is worth fighting for. Even if you have to fight alone.